send a notice out. Hopefully we will finish up this chapter today in the Krishna book. It's been a long chapter. All right. Wow. Let's see if I can find my notification here. Oh. Okay. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, send the notice out. And check to make sure on Facebook we are live. Yes, we are live. Okay, let's go. All right. Okay, so we're going to get started. Let me get my guitar and we can chant a little bit. Okay. All right, what are we going to chant? Let us chant, how about something new, the prayers to the Lord Nrsimhadev. Because we need Lord Nrsimha's protection for the movement and for the devotees. Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Rama Hare Ram Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Rama Hare Ram Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Go, Hativo, Hari, Bo, Jai Om, Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Paramahansa, also Teta, Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shidwaita Garadha, Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopa Gopinath, Shyam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya, Budale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami, Namani Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pacharni, Nivashesha Shunyavadi, Paschatya Deja Tarni. So let me read the translation to this prayer from the Puranas, actually. I offer my obeisances to Lord Nrsingadev, who gives joy to his dearmost devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, and whose nails are as chisels on the stone-like chest of the demon Hiranyakashipu. Lord Nrsingadev is here, and Lord Nrsinga is also there. Wherever I go, there's Lord Nrsinga. Lord Nrsinga is outside, and Lord Nrsinga is within the heart. Unto Lord Nrsingadev, the origin and supreme shelter, I surrender. So, okay. Sringa Bhagavan Ki Jai. So now we'll go on, and hopefully we'll finish this 87th chapter of the Krishna book today. The 87th chapter is called the Prayers of the Personified Vedas, And these prayers are quite philosophical, so it's taken some time to go through the chapter. It's the longest chapter in the Krishna book, and we will try to finish today. And of course, that's what I said last time. So now let us go to Krishna book and share the screen. Here we go. I think this is the screen. Yeah. Okay, so Omagana Timiranda Shah Galanjana Shlakaya Chakshuran Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So here Prabhupada is talking about Mayavadi philosophers again. Mayavadi philosophers means philosophers who think that the Lord's body and the Lord's personality and individuality is all illusion, and our individuality, our body, of course our body is illusion, but we are eternally parts and parcels of Krishna. The view of the Mayavadi philosophers, however, is stated in the Bhagavad Gita to be the view of the asuras or demons. Demons. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Asacham apatishtam te jagadahur anishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kim anyat kama haitukam, from this Gita 16:8. So basically the translation is they think Asacham apatishtam te jagadahur anishwaram, that there's no supreme controller and this material world is unreal, and there's no cause. So the Asuras view of this cosmic manifestation that the whole creation is false. The Asuras think that the mere interaction of matter is the source of the creation and that there's no controller or God. Now this is very similar, of course, to modern scientists, many modern scientists, not all, of course, who believe that everything came about by chance, all the genes and the DNA and the RNA and all that other nice stuff just combined by chance to make you and me and all the living entities, all of God's little creatures, because they don't believe in God. But actually, this is not the fact. From the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we understand that the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, plus the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, are the 8 separated energies of the Lord. Beyond this inferior material energy, that's the 8 elements or energies, is the spiritual energy known as the living entities. That's us. Not the body, but the soul of the body. The living entities are accepted as the superior energy of the Lord. The whole cosmic manifestation is a combination of the inferior and superior energies. So combination means that the superior energies, that means the conscious energies, that's us, and of course Krishna, we're driving the inferior, just like a person who is superior to his car, hopefully, is driving the car. And the source of the energies is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has many different types of energies. This is confirmed in the Vedas, Parasha Shakti or Vedai Vashuyate. That's from Majulila 1365, also from the other Vedic literatures, from one of the Upanishads. The transcendental energies of the Lord are variegated because such varieties of energies have emanated from the Supreme Lord. They cannot be false. The Lord is ever existing and the energies are ever existing. Some of the energy is temporary, sometimes manifested and sometimes unmanifested, but that doesn't mean it is false. Like a piece of clay may take a shape at a certain point, and after some time it goes back in the box. So the clay is not false, but the shape is temporary. That's the point. The example may be given that when a person is angry, he does things which are different from his normal condition of life. Tell me all about it. But the fact that the mood of anger appears and disappears does not mean that the energy of anger is false. Therefore, the argument of the Mayavadi philosophers that this world is false is not accepted by the Vaishnava philosophers. The Supreme Lord, the Lord himself, confirms that the view that there is no supreme cause of this material manifestation, that there is no God, and that everything is only the creation of the interaction of matter is a view of the Asuras. Asura means, again, demons. In other words, everything happens by chance. The Mayavadi philosophers sometimes put forward the argument of the snake and the rope. In the dark of the evening, a curled up rope is sometimes, due to ignorance, taken for a snake. But mistaking the rope for a snake does not mean that the rope or the snake is false, and therefore this example used by the Mayavadis to illustrate the falsity of this material world is not valid. In other words, the Mayavadis will say, you see a rope as a snake, but that vision is what is false, but not the rope itself. The rope actually exists. So in other words, our vision or perception or understanding or evaluation of this material world is the false thing. That's the illusion. But the material world exists. We're just not seeing it as it is. What does it mean? As it is, it's part and parcel of Krishna, and it belongs to Krishna, meant for Krishna's pleasure. When a thing is taken as a fact, but actually is taken as fact, but actually has no existence at all, then it is called false. Something has no existence. If I just see, like in the air, let's say gold floating in the air, then that's completely false, because there's nothing there. I mean, there's air, but I'm not seeing the air. But if something is mistaken for something else that exists, that does not mean it's false. It means the perception is wrong. The Vaishnava philosophers use a very appropriate example, comparing this material world to an earthen pot. When we see an earthen pot, it does not at once disappear and turn to something else. It may be temporary, but the earthen pot is taken into use for bringing water, and we continue to see it as an earthen pot. Therefore, although the earthen pot is temporary and different from the original earth, we cannot say that it is false. We should therefore conclude that the earthen pot and the entire earth are both truths, because one is the product of the other. In other words, the earth continues to exist even after the pot is broken. So the earth is actually there. We understand from the Bhagavad Gita that after the dissolution of this cosmic manifestation, the material energy enters into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is ever existing with his varied energies. Because the material creation is an emanation from him, we cannot say that this cosmic manifestation is the product of something void. Krishna is not void. In other words, you can't have something come from nothing. If Krishna is void, then how does anything exist? Or if the ultimate truth is void, then how do you get anything out of a void? Like if you're in the vacuum of outer space, how do you get air from it? Whenever we speak of Krishna, he is present with his form, qualities, name, entourage, that means friends, and paraphernalia. Therefore, Krishna is not impersonal. The original cause of everything is neither void or impersonal, but is the Supreme Person. Demons may say this material world is anishra, that means without a controller, or God, but such arguments ultimately cannot stand. The example given by the mind-body philosophers, that inanimate matter like nails and hair comes from the living body, is not a very sound argument. So nails and hair are undoubtedly inanimate, but they come not from the animate living being, but from the inanimate material body. It's very interesting. They don't come from the soul, they come from the body. So the body itself, in one sense, is not animate, but it only is animated when there's a soul inside. Take the soul away, the body is not an animate living entity. Similarly, the argument that the scorpion comes from cow dung, meaning that a living entity comes from matter, is also unsound. The scorpion, which comes out of the cow dung, is certainly a living entity, but the living entity does not come out of the cow dung. Only the living entity's material body, or the body of the scorpion, comes out of the cow dung. In fact, the only reason that scorpions come out of cow dung, of course not here where I live, or let's say what else, or cockroaches. I mean, for example, sometimes we find cockroaches come out of electronic gadgets. It's not that the electronic gadget is giving birth to a cockroach, it's just that some ridiculous cockroach laid its egg inside the electronic gadget, and the reason they did it is because the electronic gadget is actually warm. Nice place for eggs. The sparks of the living entities, as we understand from the Bhagavad Gita, are injected into material nature, and then they come out. The body of the living entity in different forms is supplied by material nature, but the living entity himself is supplied by the Supreme Lord. In other words, we are of the same nature of Krishna. Krishna is like the Father. The Father and Mother give the body necessary for the living entity under certain conditions. The living entity transmigrates from one body to another according to different desires, which in the subtle form of intelligence, mind, and false ego accompany him from body to body. By superior arrangement, a living entity is put into the womb of a certain type of material body, and then he develops a similar body. In other words, genetically, we're very similar to our mother and daddy. Therefore, the spirit soul is not produced from matter. It takes upon a particular type of body under superior arrangement. According to our present experience, this material world is a combination of matter and spirit. Just like you see a car moving, it's a combination of a machine and a person. Duh. The spirit is moving the matter. The spirit soul, the living entity, and matter are different energies of the Supreme Lord. And since both the energies are products of the Supreme Eternal, or the Supreme Truth, they are factual, not false. Because the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme, he exists eternally. Therefore, for him, there cannot be any question of birth or death. So-called birth and death occur because of the material body. The Vedic version, Sarvam Kal Vidam Brahma, which basically means everything is Brahman, means that since both the energies have emanated from the Supreme Brahman, that's Krishna, everything we experience is non-different from Brahman. And of course, non-different and different simultaneously. It's non-different because it comes from Brahman, but it's different because it's inferior energy of the Lord. That is the material energy, sorry. There are many arguments about the existence of this material world, but the Vaishnava philosophical conclusion is the best. The example of the earthen pot is very suitable. The form of the earthen pot may be temporary, but it has a specific purpose. The purpose of the earthen pot is to carry water from one place to another. Similarly, this material body, although temporary, has a special use. The living entity is given a chance from the beginning of the creation to evolve different kinds of material bodies according to the reserved desires he has accumulated from time immemorial. The human form of the body is a special chance in which the developed form of consciousness can be utilized. In other words, that's the purpose of this world. That eventually you move your way up to the human form, and then you can develop Krishna consciousness and then get out. The purpose of school is to graduate, to learn things, of course. But in order to graduate, you better have learned what you needed to learn. Of course, nowadays people don't need to learn anything. You just be dumbos and graduate. Sometimes this Mayavad philosophers push forward the argument that if this material world is truth, then why are householders advised to give up their connection with the material world and take sannyas? But the Vaishnava philosopher's view of sannyas is not that because the world is false, one must give up the material activities. The purpose of Vaishnava sannyas is to utilize things as they're intended to be utilized. In other words, we don't give up the material world, just like I took sannyas, not because the material world is false, but so I'll have more time and focus on engaging things in Krishna service. I don't get diverted, hopefully, with management. Oh my God. Srila Rupa Goswami has given the Transcendentalist two formulas for dealing with this material world. When a Vaishnava renounces the materialistic way of life and takes to sannyas, it is not on the conception of the falsity of the material world, but to devote himself fully to engaging everything in the service of the Lord. It's really important. And if a householder can do that, he's as good as a sannyasi. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore gives us this formula. One should be unattached to the material world because material attachment is meaningless. The entire material world, the entire cosmic manifestation belongs to God, Krishna. Therefore, everything should be utilized for Krishna and the devotee should remain unattached to material things. We use material things because we understand who they belong to. Just like if you're hired as like a chauffeur, that means to drive someone's car, hopefully you don't get attached to their car because it ain't your car, buddy. It belongs to someone else and it's meant to be used for the owner. And if you use it for your own sense grad, then you will lose your job as a chauffeur, maybe. Unless you got a very merciful owner, employer. This is the purpose of Vaishnava sannyasa. A materialist sticks to the world for sense gratification, but a Vaishnava sannyasi although not accepting anything for his personal sense gratification, knows the art of utilizing everything for the service of the Lord. That's why we're using a computer right now. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore criticized the Mayavadi sannyasis with his second formula, because the Mayavadis do not know that everything has a utilization, and for the service of the Lord they take the world to be false and falsely think they are liberated from the contamination of the material world. Since everything is an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord, the expansions are as real as the Supreme Lord is. So, if we think we can renounce something that doesn't belong to us, that is crazy. Let's say you have a nice car and I say, I renounce your car. What meaning does that statement have? That the cosmic world is only temporarily manifested does not mean that it's false or that the source of its manifestation is false, since the source of its manifestation is truth, that's Krishna. The manifestation is also truth, but one must know how to utilize it. Again, we go, the example of the earthen pot may be cited again. The earthen pot produced from the whole earth is temporary, but when used for a proper purpose, the earthen pot is not false. The Vaishnava philosophers know how to utilize this temporary construction of the material world, just as a sane man knows how to utilize the temporary construction of the earthen pot. When the earthen pot is used for the wrong purpose, that is false. Let's say if you use the earthen pot to hit someone over the head with. Not only is it false, but you're going to jail, buddy. Similarly, the human body of the material world, when used for sense gratification, is false. But if the human body and the material creation are used for the service of the Supreme Lord, their activities are never false. It is therefore confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that even slightly using the body in the material world for the service of the Lord can deliver a person from the gravest danger. 1 moment of Krishna consciousness is better than a whole lifetime without Krishna consciousness. 1 second of Krishna consciousness is better than hundreds of years without Krishna consciousness, because a life without Krishna consciousness is just like the long life of a tree, or of the bellows that apparently are breathing, or the beasts that are eating and discharging semen. When properly utilized, neither the superior nor inferior energies emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead are false. So that's a really important philosophical point for all of us. As far as fruitive activities are concerned, that means we have an activity, we want something from it. They are mainly based on the platform of sense gratification. Therefore, an advanced Krishna conscious person does not take to them. The result of fruitive activities can elevate one to the higher planetary system, but as said in the Bhagavad Gita, foolish persons, after exalting the results of their pious activities in the heavenly kingdom, come back again to this lower planetary system and then again try to go to the higher planetary system. So in other words, this is Vedic fruitive activities, not just the desire to have something, but the desire to have something and utilizing the Vedic injunctions in that regard. Then you're pious and you go to the heavenly planets. Their only profit is to take the trouble of going and coming back, like a yo-yo. Just as present, many material scientists are spoiling their time by trying to go to the moon planet and again coming back. Just like there's one person, Elon Musk, who wants to colonize Mars. What are you going to do at Mars? You're going to create the same problems you got here. In other words, you take your nonsense wherever you go. You go to a different country, you're still the same idiot you were here. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are described in the Vedas personified as Anda Parampara. That means a disciplic succession of blind people, or blind followers of the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Although such ceremonies are certainly mentioned in the Vedas, they are not meant for the intelligent class of men. Men who are too much attached to material enjoyment are captivated by the prospect of being elevated to the higher planetary system, and so they take to such ritualistic activities. But persons who are intelligent, who have taken shelter of a bona fide spiritual master who see things as they are, do not take the fruit of activities, but engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Persons who are not devotees take to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies for materialistic reasons, and then they are bewildered. A vivid example may be given. An intelligent person possessing $1 million in currency notes does not hold the money without using it, even though he knows perfectly well that the currency notes in themselves are nothing but paper. When one has $1 million in currency notes, he is actually holding only a bunch of papers. But if he utilizes it for a purpose, then he benefits. Quite a nice example. Similarly, although this material world may be false, just like the paper, it has its proper beneficial utilization. Because the currency notes, although paper, are issued by the government, they have full value. We wish. Similarly, this material world may be false or temporary, but because it is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, it has its full value. The Vaishnava philosophers acknowledge the full value of this material world and know how to utilize it properly, whereas the Mayavadi philosophers fail to do so, just as those who mistake a currency note for ordinary paper discard it and cannot utilize the money. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore declares that if one rejects this material world as false, not considering the importance of this material world as a means to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such renunciation has very little value. Because you don't know what the material world is for, who owns it, who it's meant for, the purpose. A person who knows the intrinsic value of this material world for the service of the Lord, who is not attached to the material world, and who renounces the material world by not accepting it for sense grad, is situated in real renunciation. The material world is an expansion of the material energy of the Lord. Therefore, it is real. It is not false, as sometimes concluded from the example of the snake and the rope by the Mayavadis. The personified Vedas continue the cosmic manifestation because of its flickering nature of its impermanent existence appears to less intelligent men to be false. The Mayavadi philosophers take advantage of the flickering nature of this cosmic manifestation to try to prove their thesis that this world is false. According to the Vedic version, the Vedic version, before the creation of this world, this world had no existence, and after dissolution, the world will no longer be manifested. That's true. Voidists also take advantage of this Vedic version to conclude that the cause of this material world is void, which is even stupider than the Mayavadis. Because the cause of something cannot be zero. It's like the cause, let's say if you have $100, so the cause of $100 is $0. I mean, just come on, buddy. But the Vedic injunctions do not say that it's void. The Vedic injunctions define the source of creation and dissolution as Yato Va Imani Bhutani Jayante. That's Krishna, he from whom the cosmic manifestations emanated, and whom after annihilation everything will merge. The same is explained in the Vedanta Sutra, and in the first verse of the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam by the words Janma Dyasya Yataha, Bhagavatam 111. He from whom all things emanate. In other words, the absolute truth is that from which, or he from which, all things come. That's a nice definition. And all things enter. All these Vedic injunctions indicate that the cosmic manifestation is due to the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, and that when it is dissolved, it merges into Him. Excuse me for a second, I forgot to turn something on. The same principle is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. The cosmic manifestation comes into existence, again dissolves, and after dissolution, it merges into the existence of the Supreme Lord. This statement definitely confirms that the particular energy known as Bahiranga Maya. Bahir means outside. Anga means like a limb. Maya means energy. Or the external energy, that's material energy, although a flickering nature, is the energy of the Supreme Lord, and as such it cannot be false. It simply appears false. The Mayavadi philosophers conclude that because the material nature has no existence in the beginning and is non-existent after dissolution, it is false. The Mayavadis are wrong. It's not false. But by the example of the earthen pots and dishes, the Vedic version is presented, although the existence of the particular byproducts of the Absolute Truth is temporary, the energy of the Supreme Lord is permanent. In other words, the material energy is permanent, eternal, but it produces byproducts, becomes transformed for some time. Just like the clay in a pot becomes transformed to a pot, and then it's untransformed or broken. Actually, Prabhupada talks about that. The earthen pot or water jug may be broken or transformed into another shape, such as that of a dish or bowl, but the ingredient or the material basis, namely the earth, continues to be the same. This basic principle of the cosmic manifestation is always the same. Brahman of the Absolute Truth is therefore the Mayavadi philosophy's Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. Therefore, the Mayavadi philosopher's theory that it is false is certainly only a mental concoction, imagination. That the cosmic manifestation is flickering and temporary does not mean it is false. Probably keeps repeating the same thing so we get the whole concept. The definition of falsity is that which never had any existence, but which exists only in name. For instance, the eggs of a horse, or the horn of a rabbit, or the flower in the sky are phenomena which exist only in name. There are no horse eggs, there's no rabbit's horn, and there are no flowers growing in the sky. You can throw a flower up in the air, it's not growing in the sky. There are many things which exist in name or imagination, but actually have no factual manifestation. Such things may be called false, but a Vaishnava does not take this material world to be false simply because of its temporary nature, its manifesting and again dissolving. The personified Vedas continue by saying that the super soul, that's Krishna in the heart, and the individual soul, or Paramatma, which is again the super soul, and the Jivatma, which is the individual soul, cannot be equal in any circumstance, although both of them sit within the same body. This is a very common example, like two birds sitting in the same tree. As declared in the Vedas, these two birds, although sitting as friends, are not equal. One is simply a witness, that is, this bird is the Paramatma or super soul, that's the witness, and the other bird, that's us, is eating the fruit of the tree, that is Jivatma, that's us, individual soul. When there is cosmic manifestation, the Jivatma or the individual soul appears in the creation in different forms according to his previous fruitive activities, karma. And due to his long forgetfulness of real existence, he identifies himself with a particular form awarded to him by the laws of material nature. After assuming a material form, he is subjected to the three material modes of nature and acts accordingly to continue his existence in the material world. That's us. We're being controlled by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. While he is enwrapped in such ignorance, his natural opulence becomes almost extinct, covered over. The opulences of the super soul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are not diminished, although he appears within this material world. He maintains all opulences and perfections in full, while keeping himself apart from all the tribulations of this material world. The conditioned soul, it's us, becomes enwrapped in the material world, whereas the super soul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, leaves it without being affected, just like a snake sheds its skin, his skin. The distinction between the super soul and the conditioned individual soul is that the super soul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, maintains its natural opulences known as Shad Aishvarya, means the six opulences like wealth, strength, renunciation, etc. Ashta Siddhi, that means 8 yogic powers, and Ashta Guna, the 8 qualities. Because of their poor fund of knowledge, the Mayavadi philosophers forget the fact that Krishna is always full with 6 opulences, 8 transcendental qualities, that's Ashtaguna, and 8 kinds of perfection, that's Ashta Siddhi. Ashta means 8, and Shad Aishvarya means the 6. So you got 6 opulences, or here Prabhupada is listing them. The opulence that Krishna has an unlimited degree of wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. No one is greater than or equal to Krishna in these six opulences. We have a little bit of those things, but Krishna has these things unlimitedly. The first of Krishna's 8 transcendental qualities, it is always untouched by the contamination of the material existence. So the 8 qualities are listed here. This is mentioned in the Ishopanishad, Apapavidham. Just as the sun is never polluted by any contamination, the Supreme Lord is never polluted by any sinful activity. So, for example, Krishna could dance with all the gopis, but he was never polluted by it. Krishna could steal, but he's never polluted by it. Krishna could kill, and he's never polluted by it. But that's Krishna. Although Krishna's actions may sometimes seem impious, he is never polluted by such actions. The second transcendental quality is that Krishna never dies. In the Bhagavad Gita 4th chapter, he informs Arjuna that both he and Arjuna had many appearances in this material world, but that he alone remembers all such activities, past, present, and future. This means that he never dies, and Arjuna leaves his body from time to time, like we all will continue to do. Forgetfulness is due to death. As we die, we change our bodies and forget. Krishna, however, is never forgetful. He can remember everything that has happened in the past, also everything that's happening at present, everything that will happen in the future. Otherwise, how could he remember that he first taught the yoga system of the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god Vivasvan? Therefore, he never dies, nor does he ever become an old man. Although Krishna was a great-grandfather, when he appeared in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he did not appear like an old man. He appeared like a 16-year-old boy. Krishna cannot be polluted by any sinful activity. Krishna never dies. Krishna never becomes old. Krishna is never subject to lamentation. Krishna is never hungry. And he's never thirsty. He's hungry for the love of his devotees. Whatever he desires is perfectly lawful, and whatever he decides cannot be changed by anyone. These are the 8 transcendental qualities of Krishna. Besides that, Krishna is known as Yogeshwara. He has all the opulences of facilities of mystic powers, such as animasity, the power to become smaller than the smallest, enter into the atom. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna has entered even within the atom, which is what I just said. Anantarashta Paramanu Chayantarastam, Brahma Samhita 5:35. Similarly, Krishna as the Garbhodaksha Vishnu is within the gigantic universe, and he is lying in the causal ocean as Mahavishnu in a body so gigantic that when he exhales, millions and trillions of universes emanate from his body. This is called Mahimasiti, means big, big, big power. Krishna also has the perfection of Lagima. He can become the lightest. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that it is because Krishna enters within this universe or within the atoms that all the planets are floating in air. Krishna's gravity. This is the explanation of weightlessness. Krishna also has the perfection of Prapti, to grab something. He can get whatever he likes. Similarly, he has the facility of Ichita, controlling everything. He's also called the Supreme Controller Parameshvara. In addition, Krishna can bring anyone under his influence. Wow, hypnotism. This is called Vashita. And the reason he can do that is that your heart, he gives you intelligence in whatever way he desires. Of course, he reciprocates with you. In this way, Krishna is endowed with all opulences, transcendental qualities, and mystic powers. No ordinary living being can compare to him. Therefore, the Mayavadi's theory that the supersoul and the individual soul are equal is only a misconception. The conclusion is therefore that Krishna is worshipable and that all other living entities are simply his servants. This understanding is called self-realization. Any other realization of oneself beyond this relationship of eternal servitorship to Krishna is impelled by Maya. It is said that the last snare of Maya is her dictation to the living entities to try to become equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by getting yogic powers, by merging in Brahman. One thinks it's very powerful that I have now become God. The Mayavadi philosopher claims to be equal to God, but he cannot reply to the question of why is he fallen into the material thing. If you're God, why the heck are you here? If he is the supreme God, then how is it that he has been overtaken by impious activities and thereby subjected to the tribulations of the law of karma? When the Mayavadis are asked about this, They cannot properly answer the speculation that one is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is another symptom of sinful life. One cannot take to Krishna consciousness unless one is completely freed from all sinful activities. The very fact that the Mayavadi claims to be one with the Supreme Lord means he's not yet freed from the reaction of sinful activities. Srimad Bhagavatam says that such persons are avashuddha buddhaya, that means impure intelligence. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:2-32, which means that they falsely think themselves liberated, at the same time think themselves equal to the absolute truth. Their intelligence is not purified. Avashuddha buddhaya, that means not pure intelligence. The personified Vedas say that if the yogis and jnanis do not free themselves from sinful desires, then their particular process of self-realization will never be successful. Dear Lord, the personified Vedas continued, if saintly persons do not take care to eradicate completely the roots of sinful desires, they cannot experience the super soul, although he's sitting side by side with the individual soul. Samadhi, or meditation, means that one has to find the super soul within himself. It's not simply just meditate on a candle or something. One who is not free from sinful reactions cannot see the supersoul. If a person has a jeweled locket in his necklace but forgets the jewel, it is almost as though he does not possess it. That's interesting. Similarly, if an individual soul meditates but does not actually perceive the presence of the supersoul within himself, his meditation is useless. Persons who have taken to the path of self-realization must therefore be very careful to avoid contamination by the influence of Maya. Srila Rupa Goswami says that a devotee should be completely free from all sorts of material desires. A devotee should not be affected by the results of karma and jnana. One has simply, karma means the desire for fruit of things in this world, jnana means the desire for liberation. One has to simply understand Krishna and carry out his desires. That is pure devotional service. The personified Vedas continued, mystic yogis who still have a contaminated desire for sense gratification are never successful in their attempt, nor can they realize the supersoul within the individual self. As such, the so-called yogis and jnanis who are simply wasting their time by different types of sense gratification, either by mental speculation or by exhibition of limited mystic powers, will never be liberated from the conditioned life and will continue to go through repeated births and deaths. For such persons, both this life and the next life are sources of tribulation, misery. Such sinful persons are already suffering tribulation in this life, and because they are not perfect in self-realization, they will be plagued with further tribulation in the next life. Despite all endeavors to attain perfection, such yogis, contaminated by desires for sense gratification, will continue to suffer in this life and the next. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks in this connection that if sannyasis, person in the renounced order of life, who have left their homes for self-realization, do not engage themselves in the devotional service of the Lord, but become attracted by philanthropic work, such as opening educational institutions, hospitals, or even monasteries, churches, or temples of demigods, they find only trouble from such engagements, not only in this life but in the next. Sannyasis who do not take advantage of this life to realize Krishna simply waste their time and energy in activities outside the jurisdiction of the renounced order. A devotee's attempt to engage his energies in such activities as such engagements are called Krishnartha Akila Cheshta, variegated activities performed to please Krishna. A philanthropist opening a school building and a devotee's own constructing a temple are not on the same level. Although a philanthropist opening an educational institution may be a pious activity, it comes under the laws of karma, it gets reaction, whereas constructing a temple for Vishnu is devotional service. Now it's time to, let me see how much more we have here in this chapter. It looks like we still have quite a bit. Yep, we still have quite a bit. Oh my God, long chapter. Let's go back. Thought we were going to end today. And I guess we're going to start today. This is devotion. Here we go. That's where we ended. Okay, so now we'll take some questions. A long chapter. It's like the 7th day of this chapter. Wow. So let me allow you to unmute yourselves and you can ask some questions if you like. Okay, who has a question?
Hare Krishna Gurudev, please accept my respectful obeisance.
So, what's your question?
Gurudev, like if Mayavadis who are from Shankaracharya Sampradaya and they do Pancha Mahabhuta worship and they do Abhishek of Shivling as well and they give as prasad. If we happen to know them and they give this prasad, I accept it and then I left it in my hand and then given it to the birds.
That's
Uh,
right. That's the
I
right
was
thing. Yeah, that's the right thing to do, because we can take Lord Shiva's prasad if it's offered to Lord Vishnu first.
yes,
Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva likes to eat Krishna prasad. So if you
yes,
offer to Lord Vishnu and Lord Vishnu gives to Lord Shiva, like they do in Bhubaneswar, India, and then you
yes.
take the birds. Otherwise, feed to the birds because they can't offer to Lord Shiva.
I,
They're not qualified.
yes. I was later on thinking that better I would have put it in the rubbish rather than giving to
Yeah,
birds
give it to the
because
birds.
birds will get they will not get affected.
Don't worry about the birds. They're already the birds are already affected by Krishna's illusory energy. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay, Gurudev. Thank you, Gurudev.
Be kind to the birds. That's a funny question. All right. So who else has a question? Or you can type in the text window if you're shy. Uh, let's see. Type in the text window. Lord Shiva, yes, Lord Shiva offers to Vishnu, but you're trying to offer directly to Lord Shiva. So if you offer to Lord Shiva as a devotee, if you consider him as a devotee of Lord Vishnu and think that, give to Lord Shiva for offering to Vishnu, that's fine. It depends on your consciousness. Depends on your consciousness, but it's not the proper procedure. I mean, it's better than nothing that they're offering to Lord Shiva. At least they're accepting someone better than themselves. But it's a lot better to offer to Krishna, and then you offer to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva becomes very pleased with you. Okay, Krishna.
Is it like offering to Guru, like when we offer to you or to Srila Prabhupada,
Yeah,
devotees? Yeah,
that's
yeah.
with the right consciousness. If you offer to me as an independent controller, then it's not prasad. But if you offer to me to be given to Krishna, then it's actually prasad that I offered to Krishna, or Prabhupada would offer to
Thank you.
Krishna. That's good. Okay, I think Krishna Priya has her hand up.
Yeah, I get it. That my obeisances. So I was just listening, and we know that Prabhupada is really stressing the point about how Mayavadis would engage in philanthropic activities or opening hospitals and schools. And, that's different than building a temple. And I was not meditating, but I was reflecting on how often devotees can misunderstand like a quote that's Prabhupada saying and use it a general point. And we saw previously within our society, devotees didn't place much emphasis on the importance of education. And today I was listening to a class by a good friend of yours, and he was really stressing the point how important it is. Like, obviously not everyone's going to be a Brahmin, not everybody is going to be a scholar, but how important it is that we actually have like high school Krishna conscious education and seminaries. And if we're going to have preachers, we need to have them properly trained and as a spiritual science. So can you speak some on that?
Yeah, and that's what we need hospitals too. I thank God for hospitals and doctors and everything like that. Because if it wasn't for doctors, at least, I don't know if I'd be here. At least I'd be screaming in pain right now if it wasn't for doctors. I wouldn't be able to speak about Krishna. Yeah, I mean, just for the future of the Krishna conscious movement, I hate to tell you, but 99% of the people are not going to be Brahmins. I hate to tell you that. So they need to be educated. I'm going to deviate a little bit from the idea of a Brahminical education, but they need to be educated in such a way that they fit into the socio-economic scene in whatever country they're in. And especially, if they want, let's say I was thinking about this, if we want managers or leaders in the Krishna conscious movement, they have to have a great deal of material education. Recently, I've seen that our newest members of the GBC are far more effective than the old members of the GBC. Not because they're more spiritually advanced, I'm not saying that, but because they're the ones that have joined. Actually, basically, most of them have like PhDs or master's degrees in management, and they are so efficient and effective in helping us set up different systems to manage the society. Whereas those of us who never got trained in management and just, chanted Hare Krishna from the day we were born, not me, of course. I was trained up in technology. I mean, you can't ask me about management, I don't know anything. But if you ask me about technology, I can answer your questions. So anyway, so I'm saying that the vast majority, 99%, should have like other types of training. In addition to theological training. I mean, for 99% of the people, what's the use that they can chant a whole bunch of mantras and do fire sacrifices? I mean, 1%, yeah, that's good. But if you have a higher percentage of people chanting mantras and doing fire sacrifices, they're going to be able to support their families. And, then you got people traveling around the world just doing kirtan, making money to support their families doing kirtan. I mean, there's only a few people who ISKCON could support in such a fashion. So education has to be practical. Probably that's why Prabhupada talked about Varnashram education. So Prabhupada was very much interested in Varnashram education. So I'm saying that ISKCON's present system of education is, there's let's say the impractical assumption that we're going to have a lot of Brahmins. It is and then you train someone as a Brahmin. First, we won't be able to educate himself. Secondly, he's going to be very proud, which is not a Brahminical aspect. So he's going to be very proud that he is a Brahmin, and then he's going to do things that are un-Brahminical, like trying to make money through his Brahminical activities, so-called Brahminical activities, like selling stickers on the street or something like that, which he thinks is Brahminical activities. So, yeah, we really have to understand what our Varna is and have the education according to the Varna. And that means for most people being able to integrate themselves into society at large, modern society. I mean, just be practical. We're not going to have an isolated society. We're not going to be like the Amish people, and the Amish people don't do any preaching. They're not integrated in general into general society, unless you go to a state fair in which they're selling their cheese or something like that. But who's going to become an Amish? Devotees have to be members of regular society, which means the education has to be geared in that way, not like the present education. But anyway, sorry for offending people. If I said that, I'm not sorry. But it's a fact. It's for people have to have a vision for Prabhupada's movement. Just one other question here in the text window. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, we read not meditating super soul with us is fruitless. We just read not meditating super soul. Usually we hear chanting during meditation or meditating pastimes. We wear a super soul within us, but not meditate on the super soul. What we meditate is on the sound of the holy names. I was listening to a memory. Prabhupada was asked, I think by Malati, what do we think of when we're chanting? And Prabhupada said, don't think, just hear the holy names. Or you can think of the holy names vibrating in your mind. I mean, that's a thought, but, you know. And then later on, the pastimes will manifest within your heart. They'll manifest automatically as you're hearing and chanting and reading Prabhupada's books. Okay, on that happy note, we should end. And thank you all for joining us. All glories. And hopefully tomorrow we finish. I know I've said this the last few days. Hopefully tomorrow we finish chapter 87. I pray that tomorrow we can finish chapter 87, which is the longest chapter. And after that we may go to Upanishad, and after that we may go to the Jaiva Dharma by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, having finished